Hello, curious minds! Today we're diving into one of the most fundamental processes in all of biology: how our cells get energy. Think about it. Every move you make, every thought you have, every beat of your heart. But where does it come from? It comes from the food we eat, but not directly. Our cells convert that food into usable chemical energy. This process is called cellular respiration. It's like a tiny, efficient power plant inside almost every cell. At the heart of respiration are redox reactions. Redox, reduction oxidation. Oxidation, molecule loses electrons. Reduction, molecule gains electrons. Mnemonic, Leo says GER, loss of electrons is oxidation, gain of electrons is reduction. In respiration, electrons are stripped from food like glucose, then passed along an electron transport chain, releasing energy step by step. This gradual release is crucial. If fuel burned all at once, it'd be a wasteful burst, like a firecracker. Our journey into cellular energy begins with a process called glycolysis. The name itself gives us a clue. Glyco refers to sugar, lysis means to split. So, glycolysis is literally the splitting of sugar. This is the first major stage of cellular respiration. It takes place in the cytosol, the jelly-like fluid that fills the cell. Glycolysis is nearly universal. Found in the simplest bacteria, found in complex humans. This suggests it's an ancient metabolic pathway. Think of glycolysis as a factory assembly line. The factory takes in a 6-carbon sugar called glucose. It begins breaking glucose into smaller pieces. It requires a small initial energy investment. The cell spends 2 ATP to start the line, like turning on factory lights and machines. Those 2 ATP energize glucose, making it ready to split. The line proceeds through 10 distinct steps. Each step is guided by a specific enzyme. The glucose is systematically split in half. Final products: 2 3-carbon pyruvate molecules. Along the way, the factory makes a small, immediate energy profit. It generates 4 ATP total. Net gain, 2 ATP. This is called substrate-level phosphorylation. An enzyme transfers a phosphate from a substrate to ADP to make ATP, like a worker putting a finished product into its box. Glycolysis also produces 2 NADH molecules. NADH is a crucial electron carrier. Think of NADH as a small rechargeable truck. NAD+ picks up high-energy electrons and a proton from glucose, which loads the truck, turning NAD+ into NADH. These loaded trucks carry energy to the cell's power plant to make more ATP. End of glycolysis. Glucose partly broken down, a small amount of ready-to-use energy. Energy-rich trucks ready for the next stage. It can be hard to picture these microscopic processes, so let's connect glycolysis to things we experience every day. One of the best real-life examples happens when you exercise. Imagine you break into a full-speed sprint. For the first few seconds, your muscles need a huge amount of energy, and they need it fast. Your breathing hasn't had time to catch up. Your heart rate hasn't had time to catch up, so oxygen can't be delivered fast enough to cells yet. In this situation, your muscle cells rely heavily on glycolysis. It doesn't require oxygen to operate, making it perfect for a quick burst of power. This is anaerobic metabolism, generating ATP without oxygen. Glycolysis rapidly breaks down glucose stored in your muscles, giving an immediate net gain of 2 ATP molecules per glucose. ATP powers the explosive contraction of leg muscles, dashes across a field, and lifts a heavy weight. It's not the most efficient. You get far more ATP later with oxygen, but speed is its biggest advantage. Think of it as the cell's turbo boost. Another great example is in baking and brewing. Yeast, a single-celled organism, is a glycolysis master. Baker mixes yeast, flour, water, a bit of sugar, then mixes into dough. Yeast breaks down sugars in the flour through glycolysis. Inside dense dough, there's very little oxygen, so yeast can't use the later respiration stages. It relies on initial sugar splitting to get energy to live and reproduce. Fermentation comes next. This shows how universal glycolysis is. The same reactions power a sprinter and a tiny yeast cell, helping bread rise. Evolution conserved this core pathway across life. After glycolysis has successfully split a glucose molecule into 2 pyruvate molecules in the cytosol, the cell faces a critical decision. The fate of pyruvate depends entirely on one thing: the presence of oxygen. If oxygen is available, the cell can unlock a much greater amount of energy from the pyruvate. To do this, The pyruvate molecules are transported from the cytosol into the mitochondria, the true powerhouses of the cell. This journey across the mitochondrial membranes is a key transition point, moving from glycolysis to the more advanced oxygen-dependent stages of respiration. Once inside the mitochondrial matrix, each pyruvate molecule undergoes pyruvate oxidation. Think of this as a quick processing station at the entrance of the main factory floor. Each 3-carbon pyruvate is prepped for the next stage. An enzyme complex removes one carbon atom, releasing it as carbon dioxide. This is one of the first points where carbon from food becomes the CO2 we exhale. Electrons are stripped and passed to NAD+, converting it to NADH. We collect more of these high-energy electron carriers. The remaining 2-carbon fragment is attached to coenzyme A, CoA. That creates acetyl-CoA, a highly reactive molecule. The acetyl, 2-carbon group attached to CoA, primes it for the next stage. For each glucose, 2 pyruvates. This step yields 2 acetyl-CoA, 2 NADH, and 2 CO2. No ATP is made here, but NADH is vital for the big energy payoff later. Pyruvate oxidation is the crucial link connecting glycolysis to the circular pathway that will fully harvest glucose's energy. Now that we have our acetyl-CoA molecules prepped and ready inside the mitochondrial matrix, they are ready to enter the next major stage, the citric acid cycle. This cycle is also famously known as the Krebs cycle, named after the scientist Hans Krebs, who helped discover its steps. Think of this cycle as the central processing hub of the factory, a continuously spinning carousel that systematically breaks down acetyl-CoA and harvests the electrons from our original glucose. The cycle begins when the 2-carbon acetyl-CoA joins a 4-carbon molecule, forming a 6-carbon molecule called citrate, hence the name. Citrate begins a journey through 8 distinct steps, each step catalyzed by a specific enzyme. As it moves, it is progressively oxidized, its carbon atoms dismantled and electrons stripped away. In 2 steps, carbon atoms are released as carbon dioxide. Since we started with a 2-carbon acetyl group, 2 molecules of CO2 are released per turn. This completes the breakdown of the original glucose. All 6 carbons are now released as 6 CO2 molecules. The cycle's main purpose isn't to make lots of ATP directly. Each full turn makes only 1 ATP or GTP via substrate-level phosphorylation. The vital function is loading up electron carrier trucks. Each acetyl-CoA yields 3 NADH and 1 FADH2. NADH, supercharged trucks holding high-energy electrons. FADH2, another loaded truck carrying high-energy electrons. 1 glucose gives 2 acetyl-CoA, so the cycle turns twice per glucose. From 2 turns, 2 ATP, 6 NADH, 2 FADH2. The original sugar is now gone, converted to CO2. The cell has only a tiny direct ATP gain, 4 in total, from glycolysis and the citric acid cycle. But it captured enormous energy as 10 NADH and 2 FADH2. These loaded trucks head to the final stage of respiration to cash in for a massive energy payout. We have now arrived at the final and most productive stage of cellular respiration, oxidative phosphorylation. This is where the big energy payoff happens, and it takes place on the inner membrane of the mitochondrion. This membrane is folded into many cristae, increasing its surface area, providing more space for this process to occur. Oxidative phosphorylation consists of 2 closely coupled parts, the electron transport chain and chemiosmosis. All those loaded NADH, FADH2 trucks, carrying high-energy electrons from glycolysis, the citric acid cycle, deliver their cargo here. This is the main power plant of the cell. The first part is the electron transport chain, a series of protein complexes embedded in the inner mitochondrial membrane. When NADH, FADH2 arrive, they drop off their high-energy electrons at the beginning of the chain. These electrons are then passed from one protein complex to the next, like a bucket brigade, a series of tiny downhill steps. With each transfer, the electrons lose a small amount of energy. This released energy is used by the protein complexes to pump protons, hydrogen ions, H+, from the mitochondrial matrix across the inner membrane into the intermembrane space. This pumping action creates a powerful electrochemical gradient. Imagine pumping water uphill into a reservoir behind a dam. The ETC is pumping protons from an area of low concentration, the matrix, to an area of very high concentration, the intermembrane space. This buildup of protons creates a form of potential energy, much like the water stored behind the dam. The protons desperately want to flow back down their concentration gradient into the matrix, but they are blocked by the membrane. This proton motive force is the key energy source that the cell will now use to make ATP. At the very end of the electron transport chain, the now low-energy electrons need a final place to go. This is where oxygen plays its vital, non-negotiable role. Oxygen is the final electron acceptor. An oxygen atom scoops up 2 electrons from the end of the chain, combines with 2 protons from the matrix, to form a molecule of water, H2O. This is why we need to breathe oxygen. Without it, the electron transport chain would get backed up with electrons and grind to a halt. No electrons moving means no proton pumping, and therefore no energy production in this stage. The potential energy stored in the proton gradient is now ready to be unleashed. The second part of oxidative phosphorylation, called chemiosmosis, is the process that harnesses this energy. The protons that were pumped into the intermembrane space cannot simply diffuse back across the membrane. Their only path back into the matrix is through a remarkable molecular machine embedded in the membrane called ATP synthase. This enzyme is one of the most incredible structures in all of biology. It functions just like a hydroelectric turbine in a dam's power plant. As the protons rush back down their concentration gradient, they flow through a channel in the ATP synthase. This flow of protons causes a part of the ATP synthase complex to spin rapidly, like a water wheel or a turbine spinning as water flows through it. This mechanical spinning motion is a form of kinetic energy. The genius of ATP synthase is its ability to convert this kinetic energy into chemical energy by forcing phosphate groups onto ADP molecules, thereby generating a massive amount of ATP. It's a stunning example of energy conversion at the molecular level. This single process is responsible for producing the vast majority of the ATP our cells use every day. While glycolysis, the citric acid cycle together produce only a handful of ATP molecules directly, the process of oxidative phosphorylation can generate up to 34 additional ATP molecules for every single molecule of glucose that is broken down. This is why the mitochondria are called the powerhouses of the cell. They are incredibly efficient at converting the energy stored in electron carriers into the ready-to-use ATP that powers all cellular activities, from thinking, running. So, let's put it all together. We've seen the incredible efficiency of cellular respiration when oxygen is present. But what happens when it's not? What if a cell finds itself in an anaerobic environment, meaning one without oxygen? Without oxygen to act as the final electron acceptor, the electron transport chain comes to a complete stop. The NADH, FADH2 have nowhere to unload their electrons. So the supply of NAD+ needed for glycolysis quickly dries up, and the supply of FAD needed for the citric acid cycle dries up. The cell needs a backup plan to continue making at least a little ATP to survive. That plan is fermentation. Fermentation is an anaerobic pathway that follows glycolysis. Its primary purpose is not to produce more ATP, but to solve the truck problem and regenerate electron carriers. It needs to regenerate the NAD+ that was converted to NADH during glycolysis. By recycling NADH back into NAD+, glycolysis can continue running, producing a small net gain of 2 ATP per glucose. This isn't much, but for some organisms it's enough, and for our cells in a short-term emergency, it's better than nothing. Fermentation keeps the first stage of energy production going when later stages are shut down. There are 2 common types of fermentation. The first is lactic acid fermentation. This happens in our muscle cells during strenuous exercise. When you're sprinting, muscles use oxygen faster than the bloodstream can deliver it. To keep getting energy, they switch to fermentation. Pyruvate, the end product of glycolysis, accepts the electrons from NADH, converting NADH back to NAD+, and turning pyruvate into lactate, or lactic acid. This lets glycolysis continue, but lactate buildup contributes to muscle fatigue and soreness. The second type is alcohol fermentation, carried out by yeast and some bacteria. Pyruvate is first converted into a 2-carbon compound, releasing carbon dioxide. This makes bread dough rise and puts bubbles in beer and in champagne. Then that 2-carbon compound accepts electrons from NADH to regenerate NAD+, producing ethanol as the final waste product. For millennia, humans have used yeast's pathway to create bread, wine, and beer, all thanks to yeast responding to a lack of oxygen. Let's take a moment to recap this incredible journey of energy. It all starts with glycolysis in the cytosol. Glycolysis splits glucose. It makes a tiny bit of ATP. It loads some electron carriers. If oxygen is present, pyruvate moves into the mitochondria. Pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA enters the citric acid cycle. The cycle finishes by breaking down carbon from our food. It releases carbon dioxide. It loads up electron carriers, NADH, FADH2. In oxidative phosphorylation, carriers deliver high-energy electrons to the electron transport chain. The chain uses that energy to pump protons and create a gradient. That gradient powers the ATP synthase turbine. ATP production ramps up massively. If oxygen is not available, the cell switches to fermentation. Fermentation recycles NADH back to NAD+, keeping glycolysis going. It ensures a small but steady supply of ATP. Lactic acid fermentation occurs in muscles during a sprint. Alcohol fermentation by yeast in bread dough. These pathways show life's adaptability. A highly efficient, high-yield primary system. A less efficient but crucial backup system. Now, let's zoom out to the grand cycle of life on Earth. Cellular respiration is fundamentally linked to photosynthesis. Think of them as two sides of the same coin. Photosynthesis uses sunlight. It builds sugar molecules like glucose from carbon dioxide and water. It releases oxygen as a byproduct. Cellular respiration does the exact opposite. It takes sugars and oxygen. It breaks them down to release stored energy as ATP. It produces carbon dioxide and water as waste. The waste of one is the raw material for the other. Plants capture solar energy and store it in food. Animals and plants release that energy through respiration. It's a continuous cycle of energy and matter across ecosystems. Understanding how a single sugar molecule is broken down connects you to the whole web of life.